to talk about. Let's talk first of all about the vote last night. The Tories, Kemi Badenoch, had pushed for the vote for there to be basically a national statutory public inquiry into the grooming and rape gangs involving white working class girls being raped en masse and no one doing anything about it pretty much for 20-odd years. The government whipped against that. It's got voted down. There does seem to be some softening on this issue. Why do you think a public inquiry is needed?
Because the fact is that there hasn't been a dedicated examination across dozens of towns of what's really gone on.
As Kemi Badenoch said, joining the dots.
And that's the point. And the reality is, yes, victims and survivors want action, but actually we could also have a dedicated short inquiry, let's say a year, and that's what we're calling for. That's what I called for in the chamber yesterday.
Yeah, they don't need to take 7 years.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. You don't need to take 3 or 5 years. Do it, just employ the right number of people to get it done, if necessary, 24/7, because victims and survivors want to know answers. Who knew what when? Who covered up what when in dozens of towns up and down England?
We do need names. We want to know who knew, who didn't know. Tell us the name of your social worker that you told. Tell us the name of your teacher.
And it's not good enough. What was said in the chamber against me was that, well, the Jay inquiry by Professor Jay included a sort of subset, but that I've looked in detail at it. They only interviewed 6 witnesses, 6 for heaven's sake.
They didn't even interview people like Maggie Oliver, the Rochdale whistleblower.
So this was frankly just not enough. And we've got to get answers, and I think that the Labour Party and the Keir Starmer is completely out of touch with the mood of the people.
What did you make of, I mean, you know, Chris Philp, not your party, Shadow Home Secretary, he got sort of booed when he was talking about this issue and how, you know, the political point scoring was the accusation. Rupert Lowe, your colleague, praised by Elon Musk, interestingly. He made some very good points, I think, on social media and also in a speech in Parliament where, you know, a question where he literally said, these are the questions we need to know. How many, you know, we want data, he wants specific answers. How many children were born? How many... he wants all the details. But tutted at, booed.
Oh, the atmosphere in the chamber was actually really toxic. But I think those Labour MPs, they might have thought they were clever on the day. I think they will look at their inboxes over the next few days, they'll go back to their constituencies, and I think they will be horrified by the onslaught they get. And I think there is a softening of the Labour Party's position. I think within a week we will see something happen. They might call it something else.
Yes.
But to sort of, you know, but I think, in fact, the Prime Minister was much more measured at PMQs than he was in his speech a couple of days ago when he accused anybody of wanting an inquiry as being associated with the far right.
Well, we're all far right now if you ask to find out the details about these grooming gangs.
The whole term has been sort of utterly sort of debased. It's ridiculous. But it's really serious and we need to know.
This issue, I mean, this is something that, you know, Tommy Robinson has made a lot of noise about, and good for him. Again, people will say, like, oh, you know, you're hating Tommy Robinson. No, I'm just saying there are things that he's done and said over the years which have been valid and worthwhile and people should have paid attention to, and things that he has done that are very wrong. There's a reason why he's behind bars right now, not a political prisoner. However, his cause, effectively, allied with this issue, is why Elon Musk was basically rather critical of your party leader and your good friend, Nigel Farage, saying he's not up to the job of leading your party anymore. He seemed to think that Rupert Lowe was the man for the job. Now, where are you with Elon Musk right now? 1 minute he was apparently going to give you $100 million, and visits and everyone's shaking hands and posing in front of for photographs. Next minute he's saying he wants none of it.
Look, you can be friends with someone and respect their incredible brilliance as a fantastic entrepreneur. I love his products, including Tesla. But equally, life would be boring if you agreed on everything. And on this particular issue, we agree on free speech, but, you know...
Well, Nigel Farage made that point.
Absolutely,
we agreed.
But here's the point. We've got convictions.
The response to Nigel Farage saying, look, we could agree to differ on certain issues, was Elon Musk basically saying he's not up to the job of leading your party.
Yeah, and look, that's the point about free speech. He's entitled to his view, but he's
also entitled to keep his money.
Of course, and do you know what? But that's the point. Actually, we've shown strength, real strength, by showing that we're people of conviction and principles. We're not for sale to anybody. We know what's right, we know what's wrong, and in the nicest possible way, we are a fast-growing party. As at today, we're now polling with one poll, equal joint. You know, we're looking to taking control, you know, to basically being the largest party at the next general election. And look,
that is your plan.
That is the plan. Mr. Robinson, he's in jail, not for the first time, and you know he's nothing to do with reform. He would never be anything to do with reform. We're crystal clear on that, just so everybody is anybody's under any illusion whatsoever.
I've seen, certainly from our audience, there's been a lot of praise for your Nigel Farage's decision on this issue. But we see, though, $100 million would have been quite handy. I will come to local elections and that poll in a moment, but I want to ask you about, obviously, the story which it's not the most important story of the day because celebrities losing their homes in California is apparently the most important story for the BBC and other major outlets because, you know, the old adage from local newspapers, and, you know, if it bleeds, it leads. And those certainly the images of the fires in California are horrific. And, of course, you know, 130,000 people leaving, lots of people losing their homes, more crucially, 5 people dead. Obviously a very, very important, serious story. However, it is something happening on the other side of the world. It is something that happens all the time. What doesn't happen all the time is the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, as she is now, having to make an announcement of emergency spending cuts or announcement of raising yet more taxes in March because government borrowing costs have soared higher than they were in 2022 when Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng announced that 2022 mini budget. At that point, everyone completely lost their minds. Massive criticism of her and of Kwasi Kwarteng. She sacked her Chancellor. She then later had to fall on her sword, lasted only 49 days in office as PM because of that massive extra hike in the cost of borrowing and the damage in the markets. It's now higher. What is your reaction to that, and indeed the political coverage of
this? The reality is that the Labour government's blunder budget has collapsed confidence. Sterling is falling, investment is falling, jobs are falling. The only thing that's going up, as I've just said in the House of Commons before I came here, is inflation's going up and the cost of debt is soaring. And that means that the cost of mortgages very quickly will be soaring. And if we're not very careful, if the government doesn't change course and cut this vast amount of wasteful spending that we all know is going on, cut daft regulations and create some growth, then we are heading towards a financial crisis. Be under no illusion. And the Labour front bench and the Labour Party, they have no idea what they're talking about. They think you can just keep printing money. You can't. And the bond market experts that I've been speaking to in recent days are very, very anxious.
You don't realistically expect Labour to do any of those things.
Of course not.
In which case, we had a caller earlier saying, you know, he runs a business, he runs a construction business, does extensions. He had 2 big extensions, but both of those cancelled. He's had to lay off a young lad he's hired. He's got a young baby. You know, can't pay his bills. You know, there is a knock-on effect that won't be happening to just his company. It'll be happening across the board. Lots of employers, especially the National Insurance Act, £25 billion extra tax on businesses employing people in this country. How bad do you think it's all going to get?
Well, I've just said in the chamber, I've nailed my colours on the mast. I don't know when, but I'm afraid to say I think we are heading to a difficult place. It's just a question of how difficult and how soon. And you just can't keep spending more than you are earning in any walk of life, whether it's a small business, a personal budget at home, or when you're running the country, and expect your lenders just to keep lending you money. At some point, they will say no, and that is what the financial markets are now looking at. And what happens is you get a herd instinct, and they can smell blood. And my concern is the markets fairly soon are smelling blood.
The cost of servicing our debt currently in Britain, one of the biggest economies in the world, is now more than the cost of servicing the debt of Greece, a basket case.
It's not a great look. It's really, I mean, Greece is a wonderful place to go on holiday.
Why do you think this isn't leading the BBC today?
Oh, funny that. Well, look, you have to ask them.
It got a brief mention on the Today programme.
Yeah, look, this is the key issue facing the country today. The government's been in power for 6 months. We had the budget at the end of October, and they seem to have forgotten the last 2 months of GDP data in September, October, both down. We're heading into recession.
But we do have money because we're about to give £9 billion in total, 90 million a year, but a lot of that money basically, you know, given in the first few years to Mauritius to give them the Chagos Islands, to which they have remotely no claim whatsoever. Islands many thousands of miles away.
Very clear.
So we do have the money.
No, we don't. This is unfunded spending. You know, the Labour Party bang on about unfunded tax cuts. There's no such thing. There's unfunded spending. And we haven't got that £9 billion to pay to Chagos to take away our own freehold that we currently own. We haven't got £22 billion to spend on climate change. We haven't got all of these billions to spend on this, you know, this sort of great British energy. You know, we are in a really bad place, and we've got to reverse course.
What do you make of that warning last night given out that between the hours of 4 and 7 p.m. last night, we could possibly face blackouts, and they were going to have to work? I think it was £2 million per hour was being spent by British taxpayers on keeping gas power stations working because it was very, very cold and we needed our heating and people wanted to make their dinner, put the kettle on, put the telly on. But we didn't have very much wind. This is often the case in the depths of winter, and therefore we needed gas power to power electricity, as we do pretty much all of the time. What do you make of a first world country, the 21st century, not being able to
January
keep the lights
comes round
on?
every year, and guess what? It's always,
can you tell the NHS that? They're not sure about
that. It's
that.
always cold in January, by and large, and we always need more energy to heat people up, keep people warm in January. So this is no surprise, but if you rely on renewables and you get what's called a Dunkelflaut, which is about the only German word I know, which means there's no wind, there's no sun, there's low cloud, we're in the doo-doo if we haven't got lots of gas and lots of nuclear-created electricity to keep people warm. And that's the situation. And so what's happening is net zero is driving our bills up, it's driving up the cost of living, it's driving down our economy, it's killing jobs, and it's another reason why we are heading towards a real crisis. And the dots are being joined by people in the city, and it's only reform that calls this out.
Okay. I'm not to make light of this, but I did not in my January bingo card have Dunkelflaut and Doo-Doo in the same interview. I did not. I'm just saying that. Just funny. You guys have got yourself in a tizzy about the local elections. Now, there's a decision to local councils, largely Tory-controlled local councils, being asked by the Labour government to postpone local elections by a few months. They're due on May the 1st, to delay them, some for up to a whole year, over these big changes announced by Angela Rayner, the Deputy Prime Minister, where you're taking away, where you've got sort of district councils and county councils, everyone all on top of each other, taking out a layer. I'm sure they'll end up employing the same number of people. Who are we kidding? It's Labour making these reforms.
They won't when we take charge.
Okay, but basically taking them out. And basically, instead of having an election on May the 1st to then have a completely big organisation, having another set of elections, postponing those elections. Now, there was a lot of talk that you guys, with or without Elon Musk's money, Reform UK, riding ahead in the polls, doing well, that you could make a big show in local elections. Look, we can take a council, we could run a council. This was your big opportunity to show a little bit of, of progress since the election on July the 4th. Is this an issue? Because you're still going to get those local elections.
Yeah, we'll
They're
get
not
them
banning local elections.
No, well, look, whenever the elections are, there'll be some elections, but a lot less than was previously forecast. Wherever they are, we will be fighting hard. There's also some mayoral elections. We think we can do extremely well in them. We're going to be very focused. The truth is, local councils need root and branch review and reform. There is just waste everywhere. And we're going to be saying to people, this is what we've got to do. We've got to relook at everything and rewire the way we run councils, we run devolved nations like Wales and Scotland, and actually look at a complete review and reform of the way we run the country. So that's our stepping stone. We want voters to give us the opportunity to run a council and show that we can make that work. And then we're looking forward to, obviously, the devolved nation elections in the Senedd in Wales and Holyrood in Scotland in May 2026. But
there's a lot of claim from people your side saying, this is an attack on democracy. Is it an attack on democracy? Or, should we not make those claims when it isn't? We had elections delayed before.
Let's see what happens. It's not a great look delaying elections.
But if there's a reason to delay
if some are
elections,
delayed and the reasons are clear and well explained,
they have been.
Well, ish. It's not yet confirmed. Let's see. But whatever elections there are, we will fight them and hopefully win some and show people what we can do. That's the plan.
Okay, Richard Tice, very much appreciate you joining.